Okay, we got cut off there. So I'll just continue. I didn't realize we were cut off, but we had borrowed from our whole number 3 and turned it into 2 halves. So we had 2 halves take away 1 half. So 2 minus 1 is 1. And then, of course, you keep your denominator as a 2. And then you would have your whole number 3, not 4. Okay, we used one of those wholes. So it's whole number 3 minus 1 is 2. So your answer on that was 2 1/2 pounds. Now, let's look at our last question here. And I actually already wrote the answer because I thought I was recording. Number 3, describe the distribution of data in the line plot. So basically what this is saying is, what do you see when you look at this line plot? How are the x's spread out? Do they gather around one of the places, one of the weights? What are the trends here? So this is kind of, you're just looking at it, and you can kind of see that it has this sort of almost triangular shape. Do you see that? And most of our weights are in this area here. Do you see that? So most of the weights of our packages fell between the 2 pound to the 3 pound region. So I actually accidentally wrote. So what I wrote as my answer here, most of the packages were in the 2 pound to 3 pound range. Okay, you could also write something like, you know, a triangular or a pyramid shape was formed, something like that. That would be perfectly acceptable as well. Now, let's take a look at our next problem. We're going to move on to a situation that involves plums. So it says, Sammy has a bag of plums. She weighs each plum and organizes the data in the table. So this is not raw data here. This is organized data, okay? So she has some different weights here. So take a look. We go from 1/8 of a pound all the way up to 3/4 of a pound. So that's a big plum there, right? There were 2 plums that weighed 1/8 of a pound, 6 that weighed 1/4, 5 that weighed 1/2, 3 that weighed 5/8, and 2 that weighed 3/4. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a line plot using the data above. So the first thing you want to do is use some kind of straight edge, okay? I'm going to have to put this down for just 1 sec. Okay, sorry, I had to draw that line and I only have 1 hand. Now, put my arrows on there, and I'm going to think to myself, what am I going to be putting on this line plot? So what you're going to do is you're going to look at your data, and you're going to think, well, what am I talking about here? I'm talking about the weight of plums. So I'm going to say plum weights, and then my unit, of course, is going to be pounds. So I'm going to write that down here at the bottom, plum. And plums are fruit, if you didn't know. Plum weights in pounds. All right, now we have to figure out, how are we going to split up our line plot? Okay, this is kind of tricky. This is the tricky part. So I'm going to look at my weights. I see I have some 1/8 in here, I have some 4ths, I have halves. So I'm really going to need to think, well, I think I'm going to have to split this up by 1/8, because I have 1/8 in here, and that is my smallest piece, which has, you know, the largest denominator is going to be your smallest piece. So you might want to take your ruler just to kind of help you decide how you're going to split it up. 1/8 is my lowest, so I might actually start with 0 here. So I might go, you know, like 0, 1/8, you know, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, 6/8, 7/8. Now 6/8 is the same as 3/4. So I might actually move this over a teeny bit because I don't want to be on one end. So let's see. Yeah, I'll do that. Okay, so I'm going to start down here. I'm going to do, there's my 0. And then I'm going to do one right here. That'll be my 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, 6/8, and I'll go ahead and do 7/8 and may as well just do 8/8, right? Why not? We're living life. Okay, so this is a 0, and then we have to do 1/8. Now, 1/8, and I'm gonna show you kind of a cool trick. 1/8, we're going up by eighths here, but I want you to look at the 2/8. That actually is an equivalent fraction for 1/4. Do you see? And we have 1/4 in here. So what you would want to do is either not write 2/8 at all, or down below here, you could write 1/4. You see that? Those are the same thing. Okay, the next one up is 3/8. And that one doesn't turn into anything, okay? The next one is 4/8, and I want you to think about 4/8. 4 is half of 8, so guess what? This is an equivalent fraction for 1/2. And look, we have a 1/2 up there. We have 5 of them, actually. 5/8 is next, and 5/8 does not simplify or anything. 6/8 actually does simplify. If you divide top and bottom by 2, you would get 6 divided by 2 on top, which is 3, and you would get 8 divided by 2 on bottom, which is 4. So 6/8 is the same as 3/4. You see that? 7/8, and then 8/8. And let's think about what is 8/8. That's 1 whole, right? Okay, now let's put our x's on here. So that is kind of the fun part of doing a line plot, are the x's. So let's look at our 1/8. We have 2 of them. So go down to your 1/8, 1x, 2x, done. 1/4, we have, oh my, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, lots, okay? Ooh, I went a little crooked there, oh well. 1/2, we have 5. Now, look at this. We did not have any in the 3/8, so guess what? We don't put any x's there because there weren't any of those, okay? So, but the 1/2, we did have 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay? And then we had some 5/8, so that's 3. So 5/8, we actually had 3 there. 1, 2, 3. And then for the 3/4, we had 2. So this was our 3/4. 1, 2. And that's all of them. There's our line plot, done. Now let's answer some questions. It says, what is the total weight of the plums? Oh my. Okay, so what we have to do here is we have to say, okay, we are going to have to add up all of the weights. All of the weights. So what we're gonna do is we're not gonna freak out. We're gonna go one by one, and we're gonna have to figure out what is the total weight of the plums that weighed 1/8 of a pound, the plums that weighed 1/4, etc., etc. So let's start first with our 1/4 or 1/8. Okay, so basically there are 2 of those. So really all we have to do is multiply 1/8 times 2. I'm going to go ahead and put that over 1 because I'm multiplying it by 2. So you'd have 1 times 2 on top and 8 times 1 on bottom. And then you would divide both of these by 2 to simplify. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. So that's my first set. Done, right? Let's look at our next one. We have 1/4, and there were 6 of those. Oh my. So we're going to simply take 1/4, and guess what we're going to multiply it by? I hope you said 6, because there are 6 of them. So it's whole number 6, so we're just going to put it over 1 so that we can actually multiply here. And we're going to get 1 times 6 on top and 4 times 1 on bottom. Now, if you can see, that is an improper fraction. So what this means is 6 divided by 4. So you may be able to do it in your head. If you can, awesome. If not, simply come off to the side and say 6 divided by 4. How many times does 4 go into 6? It goes in once, 1 times 4 is 4. Put it right below your 6 and subtract. So that is a 2. Your 2 goes up as your numerator, and then your denominator is your divisor. And as you can see, that can simplify to 1 and 1/2. So this is 1 and 1/2. Next, let's go to our 1/2s. So how many 1/2s were there? Go back up here. There were 5 of them. So our problem here is going to be 1/2 times however many of them there are, which was 5. So just put that over 1. Now you can multiply 1 times 5 on top, and you can probably already see this is going to be another improper fraction. 2 times 1 on bottom. So we have 5 divided by 2. So come off to the side and say 5 divided by 2. And say, how many times does 2 go into 5? That is actually twice. 2 times 2 is 4. That goes right below your 5. Subtract 1. Your 1 goes up as your numerator. And then your denominator is your divisor, which is 2. Sorry, that's a little crowded right there. So 2.5. So this is 2 and 1/2. Okay, we're almost finished. We have just a couple more. So we have what, 5/8 now? We have 3, wait a sec. Oh, okay. For our 5/8, we have 3 of those. So let's do 5/8 times 3, whole number 3, so just put 3 over 1. And you can see we're going to have 5 times 3 on top, which is 15. And we're going to have 8 times 1 on bottom, which is 8. Now, again, another improper fraction, right? Don't be afraid of that. Simply 15 divided by 8. So come off to the side. 15 divided by 8. How many times does 8 go into 15? Almost 2, but not quite, so it's just 1. 1 times 8 is 8. Subtract, 15 take away 8 is 7. Your 7 goes up as your numerator, and your denominator is your divisor, which is 8. 1 and 7/8 equals 1 and 7/8. We are almost finished. 3/4 is our last one here. And there were 2 of them. So we're going to multiply by 2. And we're going to put it over 1 so we can multiply here. On top we're going to have a 6. And on bottom we're going to have a 4. Now if you look up here, we already did that one, right? We divided it right there. So it's going to be 1 and 1/2. Why do it twice if you don't have to? Now, here's the trick, guys. We're not finished. It asks for the total weight of the plums, so guess what? We still have to add them all together. So we're going to do that. I'm going to look at this and I'm going to try to place things that have the same denominator together first. So I'm going to do my ones that are halves. So I'm going to go up and I'm going to do this one, which is 1 and 1/2. I'm going to write it down. Vertically, let's do our next one that has a half. So that's our 2.5. And then our last one that has a half with it is another 1.5, this guy right here. So plus 1 and 1/2. Now, this is only 3 of our 5 pieces, okay? But let's go ahead and do this piece. So we have a half plus a half plus a half. They all have the same denominator, so we're in good shape. We did that to save ourselves a little bit of work. So we're going to have 1 plus 1 plus 1. So that is 3 halves. The 2 stays the same. And then whole numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, you see the 3 halves needs to be fixed up a little bit. So what we're going to do, we're going to take this. We're going to say, okay, it's 3 divided by 2. 3 divided by 2. How many times does 2 go into 3? Once. 1 times 2 is 2. Subtract. 1 left over. Your 1 goes up as your numerator, and your denominator is your divisor, which is 2. So this 3 halves is actually the same as 1 1/2, and we have to put it with our 4, okay? So that's going to be what, 5 1/2. Now, we need this in a couple minutes. We're going to come back to it, okay? Now, we still have to add together the 1/4 and the 1 7/8 because we have not used these yet. This one and this one, you see that? So let's add those together. It's 1 7/8 and 1/4. So 1 7/8, and it's just 1/4. Now guys, look, we do not have a common denominator here. So we need to figure out, how can we do this? How can we make them match? Well, couldn't we very easily turn a 4 into an 8? Yes. So let's do 8ths as our denominator, okay? So they're both going to turn into an 8. Extend that line a little bit. And we're going to say to ourselves, how do we turn a 4 into an 8? We multiply by 2. If you multiply the bottom by 2, you have to multiply the top by 2. So this turns into 1 times 2 on top, which is 2/8. So that is just an equivalent fraction for 1/4. Now this one's already in 8ths, so all we do is bring it over. Bring over your whole number, and we have to remember that we are adding here. Now we're set up to add, okay? So here we go. 7 plus 2 is 9, and then our 8th stays the same. And then 1 plus nothing is 1. Now, as you can see, we have 9 over 8. So it's 9 divided by 8, isn't it? So let's do that. My goodness, I'm running out of room. So let's just come down here a little bit. 9 divided by 8. How many times does 8 go into 9? 1. 1 times 8 is 8. Subtract 1. And take up your 1. That's your numerator. And your 8 is your denominator. Now, we have to put it with our 1 that was already there, right? So it turns into 2 and 1/8. We're almost finished, guys. Home stretch. So this is that other piece that we need. So we have a 2 and an 1/8, but we have to put it with the 5 1/2. I'm actually going to go to the back here. So we have 2, what was it? And an 1/8 and 5 1/2. 2 and 1/8 plus 5 and 1/2. Oh my. Okay. Now, of course, we do not have a common denominator here, so we have to think to ourselves, how are we going to do this? So, thinking I could easily turn a 2 into an 8. So, and this one's already an 8, so we're in good shape. So I call this equals equals extend, where I do, like, make your line longer and your 2 equal signs. And we decided we're going to turn everything into an 8. And we're going to ask ourselves, how do we turn a 2 into an 8? We multiply by, that's right, 4. If you multiply the bottom by 4, you have to multiply the top by the same thing, which is a 4. 1 times 4 is 4. And isn't 4/8 the same as 1/2? Yes. Now the top one was already in 8ths to begin with, so you don't have to do anything except bring it over. Bring over your whole number 2, bring over your whole number 5, and your operation sign. Now we're ready to add. Home stretch. Here we go. 5 on top, because it's 1 plus 4. 8 stays the same. And 5 plus 2, 7 and 5/8 pounds. That is our final answer. Now here's the thing. That takes persistence, okay? You have to go little by little and don't give up. Last problem, it says Sammy groups the plums in 5 baskets. Do any of the baskets have the same weight? Well, guess what? We've already done the work for this because we've already grouped the plums by weight when we added them together. right? So we have to see, do any of these match? Do any of these have the same weight in the basket? So I do see that this one matches this one. You see that? So we do have two sets of baskets that match, or one set of baskets that match. So we're gonna say our 1/4 pound plums weight matches the 3/4 pound plums weights. So you would actually write that down. The 1/4 pound plum basket has the same weight as the 3/4 pound basket. They both have a total weight of 1 1/2 pounds. Okay? All right, guys, your homework tonight is workbook pages 255 and 256. When you submit, make sure you take a picture of the front and the back, and then you're going to submit the grade to the actual assignment. Okay, have a great day. Feel free to watch the video as many times as you need. Bye.